This week, water levels in the Great Salt Lake in Utah hit an all-time low. It is the second time in less than a year that the largest natural lake west of the Mississippi reached record low water levels. The West is in the grip of a mega drought made worse by climate change. And as John Blackstone reports, the drying lake is having a dramatic impact on its surrounding environment.
The lone kayaker on Utah's Great Salt Lake is capturing a developing climate disaster. Brian Footen from a company called Earth Views is using a 360-degree camera so anyone on the internet can see what's left as the lake continues to shrink.
So 30 years ago, we would have been over there along the side of the mountain, and there would have been a shoreline, actually, not a lake bed.
30 years ago, the Great Salt Lake covered some 3,000 square miles. Now, at its lowest level ever recorded, it covers less than 1,000.
That's why it's important to do it now, because if you wait another 5 years, it's just going to be another record low. If the lake bottom is completely dry, the wind picks up and it creates dust storms that carry to the urban areas like Salt Lake City.
To figure out how severe those dust storms could be, scientists from the University of Utah bike miles across land that was once underwater. Kevin Perry is a professor of atmospheric sciences and an expert in air quality.
You can see this wall of dust, and it reduces the visibility, and people are very concerned about what might be in the dust that they're breathing.
To measure what is in the dust, Perry uses an instrument that in small scale mimics a dust storm.
And what that does is it creates a swirling wind inside this chamber that simulates wind speeds of up to about 50 miles an hour.
What he's discovered in the dust raises serious health concerns for the millions who live in the Salt Lake City region.
And unfortunately, we found very high concentrations of arsenic in the soil. And arsenic is concerning for a variety of reasons. It can lead to lung cancer, skin cancer, bladder cancer, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes.
How does arsenic get into this lake?
So everybody's wondering where the arsenic is coming from. Is it coming from industrial sources? Is it coming from mines? And the simple fact of the matter is that every measurement that I took over all 800 square miles of the lake bed was high in arsenic. And the only way that that can happen is if it's naturally occurring and has gradually accumulated here in the lake bed over thousands of years.
Preventing arsenic-contaminated dust storms requires getting more water into the Great Salt Lake. But that's not easy when Utah, like much of the West, is in the grip of what is now called a mega drought. More than 20 years of below-average precipitation. This is the Bear River. It's fed by melting snow from the mountains here, and it's the main source of water for the Great Salt Lake. But right now, it's flowing at just 15% of what it would normally be doing at this time of year.
The mega drought is a contributing factor, but the biggest problem is our water use policies and the culture of water, not valuing water nearly enough. Living in the arid West.
Okay, here we go.
Joel Ferry runs a farm along the Bear River. For 5 generations, his family has been using water from the river to grow food and raise cattle. Every gallon you take out of the Bear River is a gallon that doesn't go to the lake.
At the same time, we have a way of life. You know, we have water rights to take that water. And so what we try to do is we say, let's reduce the amount of water that we're taking out of the Bear by doing irrigation efficiency practices.
Being efficient has become a necessity. Last year, his water allocation was cut by 30%. He has installed drip irrigation for some of his crops. Other fields have been carefully leveled to make better use of flood irrigation.
So what we're doing is really utilizing the water that we have in a more efficient way to make sure that there's enough to go around.
Agriculture uses about 65% of the water that flows out of the Wasatch Mountains. But demand for water by urban users is rising fast as more people move to the Salt Lake City area. Some municipalities even require that homeowners plant and maintain grass lawns. What's it like when you drive through the suburbs and see those green lawns and flower gardens? What do you think?
There's not a lot of economic value derived from that. It makes people feel good to have a green lawn. You know, we're not the countryside of England, we're the West. Utah is the second driest state in the country, and we need to probably act like we are.
Joel Ferry's commitment to saving water on his farm is one reason he's starting a new job.
The governor has asked me to serve as the executive director of the Department of Natural Resources. It's what oversees all water rights, water resources for the state, wildlife resources, outdoor recreation, all of these things. I'll be the boss.
His challenge will be convincing farmers, industry, and city dwellers alike in Utah to understand the vital importance of water conservation.
We're creative. We settled the desert. Like, we can make this work.
Not only to save the Great Salt Lake, but also to preserve a way of life in one of the driest places in America. For CBS Saturday Morning, John Blackstone at the Great Salt Lake.
Leave it to John Blackstone to come out of retirement and tell us something we didn't know. I mean, had no idea. I was just in Salt Lake City, was just on the Great Salt Lake, and had no indication of this going on. And people are in tune to what goes on in Utah.
And you really see the effects. I mean, when we talk about climate change, just the ripple effects of what they're doing and common sense policies that need to be there when you see the lawns that are required to be green in those neighborhoods.
Right. I think of California, where it's so opposite because they've been dealing with this for so long and trying to find ways to find water because they have.
Right. If their lawns are green,
you're in trouble. Exactly.
Right.